Since we started this business, we have achieved tremendous amount of personal growth. This is not just about making money, it's about growing as a person. And that is one of the fundamental things we love about the multifamily business.
Welcome. You're listening to the Apartment Investing Show. This is where you'll learn how to start or scale your apartment investing career. Your host, Adam Adams, has syndicated multiple apartments over the years. Adam and his guests will show you how to create residual income by investing in apartment communities. Now, here's your host, Adam AAA Adams.
I'm your host, Adam A. Adams. I'm excited to interview Leslie Awasom. I love that name, Awasom.
Thank you.
It's an awesome name. It's an awesome name. Leslie, let me tell you a little bit about him. So he and his partner, Tenny, recently invested, back in 2017, they invested in a 192 units as LPs, as limited partners. So they put money into that. So now they own a little piece of 192 units, which is amazing. They're on track to score 500 units in 2020. So in 2020, their goal is 500 units, and I think they're going to get there. He is a listener of the show. He really appreciated one of our episodes, episode 242. And if you haven't heard that episode yet, you got to, because Neal Bawa brought the force on episode 242 and talked all about getting into different markets and what to look for in those markets. And let's talk a little bit about Leslie. He's originally from Cameroon, Central Africa, and some 20 years ago, he came into the U.S. to pursue the American dream. That's how he got started, and he wanted to do multifamily, so he did that first LP deal, and I'm excited to have him on the show. So, Leslie, one of the things that I'm going to have you do, since you are coming into your first GP deals upcoming, I want you to think of one or two questions to ask me on this podcast.
Okay.
Anything at all, anything about meetups, anything about podcasts, anything about due diligence, whatever you want. And you'll have a free coaching session with one or two questions. And anyone who's listening who also wants to get into their first GP deal is going to get that value as well. So make sure that you can think of one or two questions to ask me in the middle of the episode today. But I'm going to start asking you some questions. So, Mr. Leslie, you're about to do your first GP. Where's it going to be? You listened to episode 242 with Neal Bawa. You know how important it is to have a solid market. So what markets are you looking in?
So we're currently looking at the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill markets, looking at Charlotte, North Carolina as well. My partner and I have done a heavy research in that market to build our teams down in that market. So that's going to be where we're going to be looking to do our first GP deal.
Awesome. So what went in to your market research to select North South Carolina areas? Like, by the way, I just will tell you that my team has done extensive research throughout the United States, and North and South Carolina did in fact come up at the very top on all of our lists. Everything that we looked at was North and South Carolina was really at the top of the top. And the only reason that we don't buy there, haven't been purchasing there, is because the flight is going to take too long. So we want it to be a little closer. So I'm not questioning you. I'm not saying, what is it about that market? I know it's amazing, but I want to know what about those markets attracted you to select that versus, the second best market, which was, you let me know.
All right. So primarily for the North Carolina market, one of the reasons is proximity, because we were looking for a market where we could be down there in a single flight or could drive down there. The other reason is familiarity. I went to school down in Greensboro, North Carolina about 10 years ago. So I still go back down there to visit every now and then. And I see some of the growth that's happening. I see the changes happening over there. Now, added to that, to the raw data, using the same system that Neal Bawa thought that I heard for the first time on your podcast, By the way, I just wanted to say thank you for all the value you guys provide to this space. For people like yourself and Neal Bawa, we've gained a lot of useful insights from listening to you guys. So we use that same system and use a lot of the systems taught by Neil to zero down to these markets and see all the growth that's happening in this market, the job growth, the population growth, and the projected rent growth over the years coming. And with the my partner and I do a lot of reading and research. One of the books I recently read was The Big Shifts Ahead, which talks about the demographic changes that are coming to the US in the next few years. And from that book, we learned about the huge southern migration that is happening with the population moving south. And those markets are some of the areas that are going to benefit a huge deal from this migration. So we look to be in these markets long term, and that is one of the main reasons why we went down there.
Do you have a full-time job, or are you full-time doing real estate right now?
Yes, I have a full-time job. I'm a nurse anesthetist.
Okay. All right. So how many hours a week is that for you?
Average 36 to 40 hours a week.
Okay. And so with a full-time, 40-hour work week, how are you and Tenny
Yes.
able to get into this multifamily business? Is it hard? Are you spread thin? Is it stressful? Or is it something that's fairly easy?
For me, my perspective might be different from a lot of other people's perspective. For me, it's it's something that I'm passionate about, so it's not as difficult. When you find something that you're truly passionate about and enjoy doing, you would find the time to do it. So for me, it doesn't seem as work. I find time in the middle of a break at work. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm reading books. Whenever time I have that is free, like today, I have a day off and I'm talking to you on the podcast. And after this, we sit down and we go over everything that we needs to be done and work on our business. So it's easy to find time when you're passionate about something. So we make time however way we can, early in the morning, late at night, whatever needs to get done to get done. And to me, it doesn't feel like hard work because I really enjoy doing it.
Awesome. So I know you've taken a couple of coaching programs. You've learned from some people that are doing really well in the business. How important is it to somebody who's just getting started to follow that same path? I guess what I'm asking in another way is if somebody's listening and they have heard that some of these coaching programs can cost 5,000, 15,000, 25,000, 40,000, 60,000. If they're hearing all of this and they're like, they might say to themselves something like, well, I don't want to spend my last whatever amount of dollars like learning from somebody, because wouldn't it be better for me to just kind of learn on my own and spend the money? If I lose money, that'll be a good education or whatever. Like, what would you say to somebody who's a few months or a couple of years behind where you are right now? Should they be hiring a coach or not?
The question I'm going to ask that person is, how much are you willing to invest in yourself? If you value yourself highly, you're going to be willing to invest in yourself highly, whatever it takes for you to get wherever you want to get. And it depends on how much you need. I would definitely recommend having a coach, having somebody that holds you accountable, somebody that has been in the business before that you could learn from and get a few things from. It definitely moves you ways ahead in different aspects. And being part of a coaching program also helps you being part of a bigger network. So, but our philosophy is we invest in ourselves, we invest in our business, and we do whatever it needs to take to help us grow. Because as we grow as a person, our business grows. And since we started this business, we have achieved tremendous amount of personal growth. This is not just about making money. It's about growing as a person. And that is one of the fundamental things we love about the multifamily business.
One thing that I've noticed about most high-level CEOs and just the top-level executives in bigger companies is the real thing that makes them stand apart from many of the employees is that they spend more time
Hmm.
in personal development.
Absolutely.
They have morning routines with exercise, they read books, and they invest in business coaches and personal coaches as well. So it makes sense that within entrepreneurs, that the ones that are going to be the most successful are the ones that are really investing in their business, investing in themselves, investing in their personal growth. And I love this quote that I got from you: if you value yourself highly, you're going to invest in yourself highly. I love that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to remember that forever. And I'm going to always tell everybody this is a quote from the famous Leslie Awasom.
That's
If you value yourself highly, you're going to invest in yourself highly. Well, I have tons of questions for you. I wanted to find out what was like your very first venture into anything real estate. I know for sure your first venture into multifamily real estate, besides the education with the two companies we discussed in the pre-interview. Um, with the multifamily, I know your first real investment into it was that passive investment with 192, yeah,
yeah, partner.
192 units.
Correct.
But I wanted to find out, were you investing in real estate prior to this 192, or was your first deal just you went straight to 192 units?
Actually, my first active deal was in 2017. I bought a single family with my brother, a condo, and did the BRR model. After spending some time reading one of Robert Kiyosaki's book that pushed me into real estate, so we bought that. I took 2 weeks off of work to manage that project. And those 2 weeks were like probably the two most fulfilling weeks of my life. Very challenging, but I enjoyed the process of seeing conception coming to light. I actually had the opportunity to bring my two beautiful daughters and my wife to look at the apartment when we got it. Then I brought them in again at the end after everything was done, and their reaction and the experience I had during those 2 weeks was enough to tell me this is where I need to be, this is what I need to be doing. So we did that model. It worked really well. And so I was looking to expand and go further. That's when I met my partner. We read a great book, and that just sparked our interest in multifamily. We're looking at what areas to get into in the real estate business, looked at assisted living, looked at buying more single homes, looked at flipping, looked at wholesale. Then we came across multifamily, and it met like everything that we're looking for the business that we want to be investing in long term. So we dove in deep, and here we are today.
I love that. I would agree. I've been a part of self storage. I've been a part of mobile homes. I've been a part of all sorts of things: land, tax deeds, tax liens. My experience from 2005, I've seen it all. I've tried it all. I've experienced most of it myself personally, and invested in almost every asset class available. And multifamily is the one that checks all the boxes. When you read that book, Big Shifts Ahead,
Yes.
were you thinking about the different asset classes available to you and which one would be more appropriate for what the book was saying might happen in the upcoming future?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I actually sent a page to my partner and said, maybe in the future we need to be looking at some kind of housing for the seniors because
Mm,
of the baby boomer generation. That is, a lot of them are getting into that age where they're downsizing, according to what is written in the books. And we have met a few investors that are focused in that space as well. And also, it's the data supports that business model. And for someone I have coming from the healthcare background too, that helps, from what I'm seeing on my 9 to 5 on a regular basis. So that's one of the aspects that we looked at from reading that book. But
okay,
multifamily definitely is a great space to be in for the future.
nice.
Definitely.
I heard you say that the data supports multifamily being a great place to be in. And some of us are more data driven and some of us are more feelings driven or emotional driven or assumption driven. Are you personally more on the data side or on the intuition side?
Data, all data and analytics. Data.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, well, then that makes this next question really work well for me. Is for somebody who spends a lot of time making sure that the data makes sense first and foremost, um, before they jump into something, while others are just jumping into it because it feels right or they're hoping that it'll work out. It sounds like you're more on the side of before I go there,
Yes.
I'm going to make absolute certain that I'm going to do the right thing. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, so on top of reading Big Shifts Ahead, listening to episode 242 of the Creative Real Estate Podcast with Neal Bawa, what else have you and your partner done, Tenny? You and your
Yes.
partner Tenny done to make sure that the data's there for getting into multifamily investments in this year? Like, and the reason I say that is because it's polarized. There's some people that are saying that it's a bad time to get into real estate. It's overinflated. Some like multifamilies has low cap rates compared to before. But you in your research, you've seen the opposite. You've seen what a lot of other people have seen, which is that the population's growing, et cetera. So if you could just give us the specifics on the data that makes you really excited about purchasing 500 units in 2020.
So it goes down to the same fundamentals. Yes, the cap rates are compressed all over the US, and ideally, based on historical data, it might not be the best of times to get in if you don't have the experience and don't know what you're doing. So part of our strategy is aligning with experienced groups as we walk forward and get into this market. So, but that is why we focus on these top markets, like the markets that have the huge numbers that can support the changes that are coming in the future.
Got it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right,
Yes.
I have another big question. What is your big why? What's your driving force behind real estate or multifamily? Like, why are you even doing this? You're a nurse already.
Yes.
You're doing just fine. So, what's your why behind buying 192 or 500 more units?
All right. So I'm going to tell you a little story. When I got done, when I started working as a nurse anesthetist, it's a very rewarding job and a high paying job. Um, when I got in and started working, I realized that I could make a good contribution to people's lives on a daily basis, but I felt like I needed to do more. When I started researching about real estate and got in and started learning about everything that is happening, going into personal development, I realized that I come from a community where a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of false information has been implanted in our minds for a very long time that keeps us it keeps the growth limited. My big why, one of my biggest whys, is to be that light, that person that steps out of the community and goes out there and challenge some of these things that most don't believe that they could accomplish, and
Okay.
come back and pass that knowledge over to others so they could make better for themselves too.
I know that you're hosting the popular meetup group out in Maryland.
Yes.
What's the name of it called again? Your meetup out there in Maryland?
Excite Capital Multifamily Meetup.
Excite. Okay, Excite Capital Multifamily Meetup. Love it. And so I wanted to ask you another question. It's if somebody's starting a meetup, that's you.
Yes.
If you're starting a meetup, it probably means that you have a feeling or an impression that thought leadership in some form or fashion would be important when raising private capital.
Yes.
Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that said, I know that you're growing your meetup Are there any other parts of thought leadership that you and your partner Tenny plan on pursuing this year? Would you there's YouTube, there's podcasts, there's blogs, there's hosting little dinners, there's hosting your own coaching program, there's hosting workshops, there's hosting conferences. Are there any other parts of thought leadership, maybe a Facebook group that you and Tenny are like, this is next for us? Or have you not thought that far?
Yes, we have. We have thought about several thought leadership platforms. Our goal this year is to maximize our meetup first off. Then secondly, we also started a Facebook group called The Exciting World of Multifamily Investing. We're looking to build on that as well. And we also looking to do a lot of educational materials. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of education to a lot of my colleagues in the healthcare field about the multifamily investment space, because a lot of them don't even know that they have access to this kind of investments. So we're looking to create like videos, kind of like YouTube videos to share as education to anybody interested in learning more.
Okay. One thing that I teach my coaching clients, I teach people how to attract capital, is that they ought to have this target market, this perfect ideal avatar, the ideal investor, someone in their mind that every time they create content, they create it for him or her. Every time that they create a Facebook post, they're thinking of him or her. Every time they have a meetup presentation, they're thinking like, does this title of my meetup presentation, is it going to resonate with him or her, my ideal avatar? I want to find out, Leslie, do you and Tenny have an avatar? Do you have like this ideal person in mind that's going to be your perfect passive investor?
Actually, that's a huge tip that you just gave us, and that we're going to take and work on it actually today and come up with a huge one, because we've been hitting our targets to anybody that is really interested in investing passively. So thank you so much for that. At this point, we don't have one, but I'm sure we're probably going to come up with one by the end of the day. So that's some huge value you just gave out there, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say you're making me smile so big now. Well, I would say one thing that a lot of the folks that are starting a podcast or starting a meetup these days,
Yes,
they are doing it like ready, fire, aim. I just got to take massive action. I just have to have a podcast, right? But they'll create a podcast, but they won't be thinking about their avatar. They won't be thinking, does this serve my perfect investor? Does this help them come closer to me or not, right?
yes.
And so what I've noticed with so many people, when they're saying like this market is saturated with podcasts,
Exactly.
they aren't specifically looking at those podcasts. Most of those podcasts have zero traction. They have no conversion. They're not helping the people doing it. They're kind of like wasting their time with that podcast not because it's oversaturated. That's an excuse, not a truth. Not because it's oversaturated, but because they weren't thinking of the end beginning with the end in mind, right? They didn't start that podcast thinking specifically, what is this going to do for my business? What is this going to do for my investor? How's this going to help them? And they're just throwing things out there, noodles on the wall, seeing if they stick, just hoping that they might stick. And oftentimes they're not, because they didn't spend the time ahead of time understanding that. So that is a very important thing for anyone listening. If you're going to start a meetup, if you're going to start a blog or whatever, don't just do ready, fire, aim like you continue to hear. Just take massive action. I would prefer for you, just like I teach my clients, make sure that you spend the time and effort to understand who it is you're helping and how you're helping them, so that you can convert them into paying clients, AKA passive investors, partners in your multifamily deals. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, Leslie's going to ask me one or two questions that are burning on his mind. and then we'll end with the final 5.
This episode was made possible by Adam's Inner Circle program. This exclusive group is a collection of industry leaders, influencers, passive investors, and strong operators. This is the type of community you want to join, where we come together multiple times each month, virtually and in person. We support each other, invest with each other, and even interview each other on our podcasts, and invite each other to speak at our live events. If you're ready to take your real estate investing to the next level, this is the group for you. Fill out an application today by following the link in the show notes.
And we're back with Mr. Leslie Awasom, the most awesome Leslie there ever was. And he's got a question or two for me. And so let's turn it over to you, Leslie.
All right, Adam. My first question to you is, what is the one tip that you give? Was the one thing that you did that made your meetup the best meetup in the best meetup in the whole world? What's the one tip that you could say that really transcended everything?
There is a lot of tips for Meetup. I'm writing a book right now on Meetup. I'm putting out a course on Meetup, and it's like there's several pillars. So the book's probably going to be called The 3 Pillars. The 3 pillars are basically who is your audience, and then what are you doing with them, and then how are you capitalizing with them? Those are the 3 main pillars. But if I had to try to boil it down to something, I would say that it boils down to niche or niche. Some people say either way, niche or niche. And the best way to niche is to do recon. Before you ever start a meetup or a podcast or anything, you got to do your recon. So what that means to me is that you go out and you see what's available. What are the meetups called? What time of the day do they meet? What day of the week do they meet? What week of the month do they meet? How many days per week? How many days per month? How many days per year do they meet? Does it cost $200 a year for membership? Does it cost $20 a day to be there? $10 a day to be there? Is it just a donation if you would like to, if you wouldn't? Is it completely free? Or are they charging $3,000 per meeting or per year? Once I've done recon, that helps me to niche better because I know what's available. And all I want you to do is be different. So if all of them are around multifamily, maybe an idea is to have something that's not multifamily. If all of them are about fix and flipping, maybe a good idea is to have something about wholesaling. If they're all about real estate and none of them are just about the overarching generic investing, then maybe you select the thing that is missing in the market. So I've read this book called Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson, and he said this thing that's always stuck with me, and it's exactly what I've already been doing, but I never thought about it in the words that he uses in that book. He says you have to create a niche, not pick a niche. If you pick a niche, that's something that's already there, and it's this red ocean, blue ocean thing. So if you just go and pick a niche that's already there, then you're just going to be fighting with people. But if you create your new niche, the thing that has never happened before, then you're able to start having people on your side. So first start by doing the real recon that you can, and then start thinking about doing things that are out of the box, not ordinary. If everybody's charging money, maybe you're free. If everybody's free, maybe you have to charge money. And then the second part of after you've really selected the niche, it's important that you use that to your advantage. And so I actually read another book recently that was talking about this, about spinning. The word is to spin, how to spin things. And that means that most things, there's always pros and cons to everything. Should I get into multifamily? Well, let's see. There's all these pros and there's also cons. are big windows or little windows better? Well, there's pros to little windows and cons to little windows. There's pros and cons. Maybe you can't climb out of it. Maybe you're heating and colding. Cold is different. So whatever it is, there is, even if you're charging more money than everyone else, spin it into a pro and use that to establish yourself as different. So what I mean is, with your own people that are attending your event or listening to your podcast, it doesn't matter, you want to say, this is the only podcast or this is the only meetup that charges $3,000 a year. If you want to go to those $200 per year, that's cool. A lot of people can easily afford $200 per year. And that's why you get so many different people in there. So many of them don't come back. You're never going to be able to see the same people. It's not regulars. But when you pay $3,000 for a year, it's going to be just regulars. It's going to be people that are serious. Do you want to go with a bunch of randos or random people, or do you want serious, wealthy people? And so that's a way to just distinguish it. And again, you could, if it was the opposite direction, you could still distinguish it. $3,000, are you kidding me? $200, are you kidding me? There is no reason that you have to pay for education. We believe that education should be free. We believe that everybody should be included, and that's why we do blank. So however you spin it, if you're the only lunch meeting, you got to talk about why lunch is so important. If you're the only Saturday meeting, you got to talk about why Saturday is so important. If you're the only breakfast club, you got to talk about how serious you got to be to wake up this early and be here on this day. So spinning. So it's all about niche. When you are starting your own meetup, if I could just give you the number one thing, it would be to niche down and to make everything revolve around niching.
Okay. Wow, that was very powerful, Adam. Thank you so much for all that value. My next question really is, you give a lot of value out to the world every day when you listen to you on your podcast and the different platforms that will listen to you on. How can we give back value to you?
How can Leslie give back value, or how can the listener give back value?
How can Leslie and Tenny give back value to you?
That is a good question. Well, I get value out of seeing other people succeed and knowing that I had even a part to do with it. So when we started this pre-interview and you mentioned that one of my podcast episodes really got you going, really got you to the next person, to the next level, hire the right person, all that. When I hear that from my listeners, today I was on another phone call with someone who literally said, his name is Xavier, and he doesn't even live in the U.S. He's a listener of the podcast. He's one of my few listeners in other countries. He's in Colombia. And Xavier said, if it wasn't for your 10-minute call with me, like I do free 10-minute calls, then I would have never got into multifamily. And now he owns multifamily, because of the podcast. Wow. Just like when something that I say has an effect on you, I guess the best thing that you could do to really add value to me is just to make a testimonial, reach out to me on Facebook, reach out to me on an email, and just let me know. Let me know that I've impacted you, because I get a lot of value out of and encouragement and fire just from knowing that what I do day in and day out, put all these episodes out, that it's all for something. So sometimes us podcasters, sometimes us meetup organizers like you, Leslie, sometimes we put out all this effort, but if we don't hear back from people saying that it's working, that it's helping, it can hurt our hearts. It can make us want to stop. And we shouldn't stop. We ought not to stop. But sometimes we feel like maybe we're not making an impact. We want to make an impact. So the answer to your question, if I'm making an impact on you, leave a 5-star rating and review on the show, email me, give me a testimonial video that I could use at an event. But those types of things really show me that I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do. So that's how I think you could give back.
Well, we greatly appreciate you, and we're definitely going to be reaching out to you and supporting in however way we can. And again, thank you for all you do, and really, really appreciate you.
Mr. Leslie.
Yes, sir.
It's time for the final five.
All right, let's do it.
So the first question for you
Yes,
is, what's the most creative deal you've ever done?
The most creative deal I've done, I have to say, is probably like my first, the first purchase that I did in real estate. I had read all these real estate books and went out and applied it. It was an estate sale, and had to negotiate all the way down and did some seller financing on the deal to get the deal closed.
Amazing. I love that. And so what I want to bring out is the thing that you were able to do is just create a deal.
Correct.
And what I mean is, it may not have been a deal until the deal was created.
Correct.
That's why we have this show, the Creative Real Estate Podcast, is to just show people it's not just about lease options or subject tos. It's about asking the right questions, negotiating until you've come to the right terms with somebody. And the more tools you have in your shed, in your tool belt, the more likely you're going to get more deals done. So thank you for sharing that. What is a book you recommend besides the one that you already shared, Big Shifts Ahead, which I have not read, but I wrote it down and it's on my list. I got to read it. But what's another must-to read?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
7 Habits. I love it. Begin with the end in mind. I shared one of them today.
Absolutely.
All right. The next question that I have for you is my favorite. Just take me back. I know that you said you got to the United States 20-ish years ago.
Yes.
You've been a nurse for a while. Your first deal was in 2017.
Yes.
But a couple years before that, just paint us a picture of what was your mindset? What were you thinking? What were you worried about? Did you have kids? Just a quick picture of what it was 5 years ago, and then tell me what it will be like for you in 5 years from today.
I honestly think I was lost. Like at that point in time, I was following the track that somebody else painted for me. We didn't have a clear direction in mind. And my mindset really began to change when I met real estate, when I came into real estate. That's why I appreciate the business that I'm in. From the people that I'm meeting, from the books that they recommend, from the lessons that I learned, I was really able to get to the point where I fully understood who I am and what my goals should be and what I'm here to do, and right now I'm at a point with a clear vision, a clear mind, a fire that is burning harder than it's ever burned before. And I'm really looking forward to the future. I feel like I've never been as happy as I am today. And it keeps getting better on a daily basis with everything that I do and how I challenge myself and move forward.
So where will you be 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I hope to be close to where you are. Hope to be there with as many units under management as you, and impacting other people and giving as much value back like you do.
I love that part of your 5-year vision revolves around giving back to other people. That's huge. So I want to share something that I heard while you were talking about where you were 5 years ago versus like just right now. And because I think it can really resonate with a lot of the listeners.
Yes.
Probably not every listener, but I think there's a ton of listeners right now that feel the way you felt. Yes. I was lost. I didn't have a clear vision. I didn't have a clear direction.
Correct.
And just to see where you are today, 192 units that you are a part owner in, everything else, like your aspirations, your dreams, where you're going, and how you're already starting to think about how you can give back to other people, I think is huge. For anyone who's feeling lost or that they don't really have that clear direction, that in a short amount of time, they can be where Leslie is. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. You now have a clear vision, a clear mind, and your fire is burning.
Absolutely.
So speaking of giving back and that you want to be able to give back, is there a way that today you're giving back to other people?
Yes, absolutely. I do believe the greatest gift that I could give back is not necessarily financial, but mental. Again, as I explained to you, one of my biggest whys is I come from a community where the mindset is filled with too many limiting beliefs. So as soon as I got into the real estate business, as soon as I was able to start eliminating some of those beliefs from myself, anybody that is interested, I spend a good amount of time on a daily basis talking to other friends and family members and getting them involved, getting them reading books. That's a little contribution I could give to them. I also love giving back to other people, giving back to other communities. I work with a few organizations that I go and help with donations and volunteering my time.
Volunteering your time, giving back. I love that. Now,
Yes.
the listener is probably thinking to themselves that they might want to reach out to you. They might want to connect with you, learn more about you or your company, Excite Capital Investment
Yes.
LLC. So let me just ask you, what's the best way for the listener to connect with you or your company, Excite Capital Investment?
So you can reach us. You can go to a website, which is www.excitecapital.com. We also have a Facebook group. It's called The Exciting World of Multifamily Investment. Please join the group and let's keep sharing value with each other. And if you're in the Maryland, DC, or Virginia area, come join us in one of our meetups. It's called the Excite Multifamily Apartment Investor Meetup. We host first Monday of the month. And we always look to give as much value as we can to our attendees. And we hope to see some of you there. And you could also reach me via email, which is L as in Leslie, A as in Apple, WASOM @excitecapital.com.
Perfect. So, so let me just kind of clarify a couple of things then,
Yes.
because if the listener's trying to spell out Excite, just want to make sure they have it the correct way, because you did spell it a special way.
Yes.
And so basically, his last name is Awasom, AWASOM,
Correct.
and so it's going to be the first initial and then last name at excitecapital.com. But that excitecapital.com, if you're going to want to jump in there and look to see the company, it's going to be, first off, it's in the show notes. So all you got to do is scroll down now and you just see it and you're, oh, that's how it's spelled. But if you're driving and you want to just have this impression in your mind of what is this website, it's the letter X and then SITE.
Correct.
Capital.com. So X, like just a letter X, and then site, SITE. So there's no C's, there's no other E. It's just X. Site capital.com. And I think that's probably the same way that you're spelling your meetup group, right? Excite. Okay.
Yes,
Love it.
sir.
Love it.
And
Leslie,
thank you for that clarification, Adam. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plus, it's going to be in the show notes. I mean, so if you're listening now, just scroll down. You got it. Leslie, it was a super pleasure to have you and to see your journey, where you've come, where you're going. I'm excited. I'm excited to see you as we progress. Would you please accept an invitation to coming on the podcast 2021 and just talking about like how you got the 500 units?
Absolutely. I'd love to come back and talk to you more. And I actually hope to see you in Colorado for the conference as well.
Awesome. I'm going to let you go, but until next time, my friend, think outside the box. As a reminder, any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are for accredited investors only. And if you're interested in working with me and my team, then go to realbluespruce.com and click Get on the List. It's that simple. Just click Get on the List to start passively investing. This has been an episode of the Apartment Investing Show with me, Adam Adams. All rights are reserved. And if you haven't done so already, then make sure that you absolutely smash that subscribe button. And I'll see you on the next episode.